Okay, there's some nice backlog items here in version 4.3 release. So let's have a look. We got site speed increase, so performance up to 15% speed increase for the CMS and Liquid, I guess. Then we have a new Liquid context object. So from what I gather, this basically consolidates all the Liquid items you might have on a page into just one output. So before, where we were outputting this and request objects, and you had all your variables separate, this now consolidates it into one. So for example, if we create a variable here and then put our Liquid context object, we would get the output of the full this object, we'd get the request object, and that variable that we created. And I'm assuming too it would include other objects when they're available, like the form submission object, member object, and things like that. In the backlog item, it was described as the equivalent to BC's this pipe JSON object, which I don't quite agree with. BC had the full output of every module that was available in that document. So you had like the menu module or any other like web apps or other modules that were added to the page. So you had the full, the complete picture of what that document was made up from. Where this doesn't seem to be that complete, but still certainly a benefit. It makes it a bit easier when developing to just have that all in one hit. So that's cool. Then we've got the ability to import, export URL redirects. So that's definitely going to come in handy. URL redirects and import, export. And then the global variables or site information builder. So this is going to be really handy. So it looks like they've done a really good job of this. So basically we have this site information now, and you can come in and create a group of properties. So here I've created a group called globals. So you can create whatever name group you want. And I've added a property called logo. So this could be the site logo, but really you could use this for anything. Create groups for the company information, particularly if the client has multiple site locations. You could have a group for each site's contact details and address and that sort of thing. Then a group for social media profiles, really whatever you can think of, quite handy. And then of course it generates the Liquid output tag and also a short version, so you don't have to have a great big long string to output, so that's really handy. Then in addition to that, it's also available in the toolbox, in the component manager. So this is fantastic for the clients because they can start actually using the, so let's just go to a page. So they can actually start using the properties because there's no point having these globals if the client then doesn't use them, and then you update a global and it doesn't update the site because the client's just manually entered it in. So really essential to have it in the toolbox here. So under site information, you can select the group that I made of globals, and then it gives us a list of any properties that you've added. You can choose that, and then you've got the option to use the full alias or the short alias. So really good job with that one. Secure zones, subscription and expiry dates. So they've added 2 new system fields in the form builder. So let's have a look at that. So if this form was being used to subscribe someone to a secure zone, we now have secure zone expiry date and secure zone expiry duration. So that's for the number of days until it expires. So you can now add those to a form and dynamically control that. And there's just a note here that you can't have both together. It won't let you save the form. Only one will work. And if you do put both inputs into the form, the expiry date field will take priority. And on a similar note, there's now a expiration setting in the secure zone itself. So kind of like a default. When we go to the secure zone, we now have the option here to set the expiry date type. So you could have not specified a custom date where we can select the actual date or number of days. And so it's saying here that describing what those options are, but basically these options will take precedence. They'll override anything that the form, if you have a form set up to subscribe someone, these options will actually override that rather than the form overriding it, which I thought was a little bit odd at first, but I guess it's a security feature. So if anyone sort of hacks the form or to change the amount of time they have for a secure zone, they won't actually be able to override what you might have set as the default. So I guess you can't use both together, but one or the other. But good to have. Then we have two more file types added or allowed for the system, KML and KMZ file types, so they've been added. We categorized rendering of events in the calendar. So not only do we have the ability to output events based on their group onto a calendar, we can now also output them based on their category. So in the component manager, events calendar, so we can choose the group that they might be within, and also the category if you have categories enabled or set up for that. And the ability for import-export of the detail layout. So now you can specify the detail layout ID in the import-export file for module items. So when you're importing, exporting in the Excel sheet, you can specify what detail layout they're to use. We have in the admin portal, the data center wasn't quite displaying properly in the portal, so now we have the correct data center that's applied for that site instance. Should now be showing. Module list in admin to list by release date. So I think this was initially requested for the blog to be shown by release date, so the newest blog would be at the top of the list. And they've actually applied that now to, from what I can see, to all any list. So let's say the blog. So we now have release date header is sortable, so you can sort via release date on any module that uses or has release date enabled, including custom modules. Advanced site search feature. So this is a beta feature. So under the gear icon, beta features. So we now have advanced search as a beta option, which uses a new indexing method, which is faster. So load speeds will be highly increased. We'll filter by event fields, such as the start date and end date and price will be highly increased. Filter by URL will be highly increased. Added or edited modules via the admin, front-end form, or import functionality will be added to the index instantly. So I guess rather than having to rebuild the index, anything that's added or imported will just be indexed straight away. There's just a note here that if an item's added during an index function, then it may not be added to the index, but I'm sure that's a pretty rare case. Events on the calendar will also be loaded faster, because I believe the events calendar uses the search function to display those items. And there's just a general note here about beta features. saying that all features under beta will be released 1 or 2 sprints after their released sprint. Some of them may change the logic already implemented by way of improvement. So check that these features don't impact your site, or if you need to change anything before they're fully released. So I guess the beta features is also an opportunity for you to check functionality if you're using those sorts of features. And in addition to the advanced search, in relation to the calendar builder in the toolbox will slightly change how the logic works there. So you can read through this, but just basically some of the values and options are a little bit different to the way it was working. But there's a note here that the system will support both the legacy version and the new version. So backwards compatibility should be okay there. We remove disable from site search influence on module specific searches. So this is the other beta search related feature. So improved for this module specific searches. So when you're doing like a custom module search or other modules that allow specific searches to be done on those fields, it's removing the disabled from site search influence. So if you select if you mark an item as disabled from site search, it will still be found with a module specific search, because you're only disabling it from the site search, not the module specific search. So I think that was the case before, but so now that's off. Okay, so now we're into some bug fixes. There was an issue with the time when an event would display on the calendar if on iOS devices having a GMT time zone, where the item would display a day back on the calendar from what it was actually released or scheduled. There's some screenshots there you can look at if that issue was affecting you. Form options in reverse order. So any form fields that have options such as checkboxes, radio boxes, drop downs, when that was generated in the form layout, they'd be in reverse order to what you put them in the builder. So that's been fixed now. The admin list view pagination. So if you're editing an item when you're on like a few pages in the pagination, so the example here is if you're on page 20 and you edit the item and you still want to edit more in that list that's on page 20, there's no easy way to get back to that page 20 in the pagination. So you had to navigate your way back there again to get back to where you were in the list. So now it sort of remembers where you were. From my test, it was a little bit hard to find. You actually just have to use, so let's say we're in an item and we're on page 20, just say, of the pagination. When you save the item, you actually have to use this back button here to get back to where you were in that paginated list page. So like clicking back here or in the breadcrumbs at the top here didn't work. It was just relating to the back button. Okay. The site suspension text was truncated, so there's just some descriptive text on what each option did in the site suspension options. You couldn't see what it all said, so that's been fixed. And just a bug in the liquid. So when you had a module component that was configured with pagination, it would show the total item count as the value of the limit parameter. So I'll just quickly show that. If we're creating, say, a custom module, that'll do, and we want to display pagination, and you'd set the limit for how many you want to display per page. When you output that, the liquid would show that the total number of items retrieved would be just 10 rather than however there actually were. So that was causing some issues with the pagination to display the wrong page numbers. Event items showing on, okay, and then event items showing on calendar before the release date. So basically wasn't taking into account the release date when showing them on the calendar. So the actual event date was right, but even if the release date was in the future, they shouldn't be showing on the site at all. They were still showing on the calendar. So now that honours the release date. Okay, so that wraps up version 4.3. Thank you.